Welcome to Mindset. I'm Suzette Buchanan, and this is not just another television program. This is my passion. Every day at the Bellevue Hospital, I interact with people who are facing real struggles with mental health. I also know what that journey feels like personally. Mental illness and its stigma have touched my life. That's why I advocate so strongly for mental wellness. I believe that just as we check our blood pressure and brush our teeth, we must also check on our minds. Mental health is not something we should talk about after a crisis. It is something we need to care for every day. Mindset is a program where we talk through the stigma and the trauma of mental illness. Each episode, we will tackle a different issue that affects the mental health of all Jamaicans, from postpartum depression to emotional trauma, to the pain of deportation, and even the silence around men's mental health. We will hear the voices of those who have lived experiences. We'll talk to the experts, watch dramatic portrayals, and we will also take the conversations to the streets of Jamaica. This series was created to educate and to challenge, and most of all, to provide answers. Today, in our premiere episode, we explore a subject that often stays hidden. Even though it affects many families across the country, that is paternity fraud. In Jamaica, we call it, you get a jacket. Often we are flippant about the situation without looking closely at the mental toll it takes on the victims, both father and child. What happens when a man learns the child he raised is not biologically his? What happens to trust, to identity, and to the bond between father and child? Our guest, Vaughn Warmington, has lived through this experience. He's here today to share this story openly and honestly. This is Mindset. Let's begin.
No, Sharon, no.
Surprise now.
I don't feel me.
So where you going so far?
What do you mean, no, me act?
What is it? All of a sudden you're at me? Look on the photo of them big and fever for you.
And it's even my fault, that Sharon.
You me tell you? You're going to say, I know you're one, you better own it.
Sharon, that's not my work, Sharon. That is not my performance. Me no craven, son. Me no long out my tongue either. You know what? From me see you go down at the mechanic so often you don't have a car. And the mechanic one. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Vaughn.
Thank you for having me.
No, yesterday was Father's Day. I can imagine how difficult it was for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being that it was Father's Day and, the memories of came back to when I once was a father. As I can say once was a father. So, people posting, sometimes persons, they tend to not even remember that you're no longer a father and they will send you the wishes and the greetings. So, I've learned how to deal with that over the time that has passed by.
So that in fact took you back on an emotional journey.
It definitely did.
Definitely did. How many children do you have, Vaughn?
Well, currently I have no children at all.
How long were you raising this child before you discovered the truth?
So I was raising him for approximately 2 years.
What kind of relationship you shared? Talk to me about that.
Our bond was very deep. My living situation was more ideal, hence they live with me and by extension my mom, my two brothers and their husband at the time. So you can only imagine how great the bond must have been.
Yes. How long did it take you to discover the truth and how?
So we discovered the truth a few days before his second birthday. And how we discovered it, so we were having some discrepancies. I normally send a tablet with him in the morning when I'm taking him by his mom. And I was looking through the tablet searching for family court to see, you know, what's the procedure. However, his mom went to the search engine and she realized that I was making some inquiries. She thought that I'd found out that, you know, something was off, but that was not the case. I was only trying to inquire to see how best we could probably manage our time with him, because that was an issue for us. And I thought best to go legal. Based on that finding on her part, she took him away for a few days. I went by the house to her father. Her father said that she's not there with him, but give her some time to cool down, because he thought that she might have just been upset. However, days went by, didn't hear from her.
So at this time, you did not have any conversation regarding paternity?
No, we didn't have any conversation at all.
Okay, go on.
When that became evident was when a man actually called the phone to say that he's sorry about what is happening, but he's the real father and I'm not. So at this point in time, that was surprising, disbelief, shock. And I told him, you know, don't tell me that, because that's not something that I wanted to hear. And I remember giving my mother the phone, and my mother was speaking with him, and then, you know, my mother came to me and she was saying, Vaughn, there's something serious happening here now, we need to check it out. And, you know, by this, I was in shambles.
After that gentleman turned up and indicated that he's the father of the child, what step did you take next?
Well, the next step, I had to get counseling. It wasn't full-on counseling, but I had to get some amount of counseling, because now my mental space was all over. I didn't know how to take it. I didn't know how to think. I was even wondering if it was a joke. You know, I just didn't know what to do.
So was a DNA test done?
Yeah, so eventually we did it. We did it. And I remember even the day that I got the result. You know, I was by my friends or by the Harborview area, as I'm also a motorcyclist. And they gave me the option to receive via email. And I remember when I got the email and I realized that he's not my son. And it really put me in a state of depression, serious depression. I had to get time off work.
Do you still have a relationship with that child?
I don't. I wish I did. I even tried in terms of, I mentioned adoption, and the father said no, and the mother said no as well. So I just let it be, because that was my way of dealing with it.
Vaughn, before the biological father came and claimed the child, were there any signs before? Did you look at the hand, the toe, to look if it looked like your hand, your toe, the ears, the smile? Was there anything that was off?
Okay, yeah, so there were no signs at all. The child actually had my complexion. He had his mother's eyes. His mouth, you know, the children don't get all the features from their parents. You're not sometimes readily able to tell, you know, if this child might not be mine or might be mine, you know.
Yes.
When I saw a picture of the biological father, yes, and he looked very much like the father. So then I started, you know, I was a little taken aback, and I started to reflect, and I was saying, you know, some things really didn't add up. Probably if I was paying more attention. So then I probably placed more blame on myself for not being aware.
You did mention earlier that you had a lot of support from family and friends, but was there that one cruel friend that mocked you?
No, there was not.
Any co-worker, any family member?
So there was nobody that would probably say directly to my face, maybe behind my back, they might have spoken, but no, nobody, they didn't come at me in any way, shape or form.
How did mommy and daddy and other members of the family provide support to you?
Well, my mom was my strength, my tower of strength, I must say, because being that he was living with me, all his things were in my room. And my mother came in one day and she started taking out the stuff piece by piece, and I started to cry. I couldn't help it. I couldn't hold back. But I must say, I don't know if my mom cried behind the scenes, but I didn't see that any at all. You know, she was my strength. My father, you know, give me a little man talk, but my mom was my real emotional support in that period.
What is your fondest memory of your son?
And my fondest memory was his first birthday. His first birthday when we did a photo shoot for him, you know, we took him out. I just remember coordinating everything, the shirts, the balloons, you know, the whole setting, the joy that he gave me, you know, thinking I was a father. That's actually the fondest memory I have of him.
Tell me some of the strategies that you have employed over the years.
I find that talking about it more, it helps me, it gives me a little relief, I must say. At first, I didn't want to talk about it as I was ashamed, I was depressed. But gradually, it's like talking about it, it takes away a little bit of the anger little by little. So I think that is actually a good strategy.
Please stay with us. We'll be right back. More Mindset coming up after the break.
Mindset is brought to you by Yardman Gas, Jack Den Medical Services, GPS to Beauty Medispa, Ministry of Health and Wellness, McKay Security, Gibbo Trading, AC Marriott Hotel, TWP Attorneys, Virtue Artistry, and 876 DNA Testing.
Welcome back. Here on Mindset, we take the conversations to the streets and hear from you.
They say fatherhood is about love, not DNA. But what happens when the trust is shattered and the truth comes late? Would you keep a child if it wasn't biologically yours? You would keep a jacket?
No. Yeah, man, basically, you go on now. If you have a bond for the youth and thing, and you have love for youth and thing, we just stay and just do the thing.
Would you keep a jacket?
Yeah, man, but it depends on how much I like a girl. That depends on how much I keep it paid.
Yeah, man, because all children are our own, you know. From he's a father for all. It not for be your biological children.
Sign the birth certificate, sir. It's responsibility of the behind the man who signed the birth certificate. By the law, court of law, that would happen.
As a man and as a human being, you would ask questions, then you would sit and think and say, me already mind him for 10 years of my life. So why be a father to a child 10 years of your life and then walk away from that child?
Our first episode right after Father's Day, paternity fraud. It's not usually called fraud, but in truth, my guest Vaughn fathered a child who he thought was his own, and as it turns out, he was not. So Vaughn, earlier you told a story of how you found out and how you dealt with it at that time. Now let us look into the future and look what the future looks like for you. Would you want to have children still?
Well, definitely. I do look forward to having a child, as I don't have any as yet. But it's a very sensitive thing for me as a result of what happened before. Because, you know, how do you trust, you know? How do you know? And also, I had conversations before, and I've heard females say that, you know, if they become pregnant for a man, they would not allow them to do a DNA test because that means that there's distrust.
Yes.
So it's a little sensitive, but I do look forward to having.
So in starting your family and based on your experience, your past experience, what steps are you going to take? No, that will be different from the ones you took earlier. Are you going to say to the mother, the baby is born, let's go and do a DNA?
Well, I'd like to say, or I'd like to believe that it will become a conversation between me and the mother, of course, you know, and she'll also have to understand that where I'm coming from, you know, to where we are now. So based on that, I would love if it is that she would allow me to possibly do a DNA, you know, because it will provide some sense of comfort for me.
Did you struggle with loving after that experience?
Most definitely. Most definitely, because what that did to me, I felt betrayed.
Yes.
You know, distrust, that all the words that could describe those feelings, that came across me based on that experience. It was very difficult for me.
Have you ever seen that child and the mommy after this experience?
I saw them once. We both lived in the same area, but that's how we saw them. But I also got word that the child was no longer living there, hence I haven't seen him from that he was living with his father. So I don't know what's the situation like with him now. But if I got the chance, I would like to meet him again, knowing that I fathered him for 2 years.
If the opportunity of adopting that child presents itself today, would you adopt that child?
I would consider. I must say I would consider. I won't say yes, I won't say no, but I would definitely consider, because there's still a part of me that is attached to that child.
What do you miss most about being a father?
What I miss the most, it would be definitely coming home to him. Knowing that he's there, because a lot of times I would be going out, going on the road, and once I put on my clothes, it's bawling, though I'm going anywhere. And even just that alone sometimes it just change my mind. If I do go, I do stay length of time that I had originally planned to stay, because I know that more than likely he might be up there waiting for me. And I just didn't like the idea of him being up and waiting, because it worries me as well. So those things, I really miss those things.
Based on your experience, the emotional turmoil that you went through, I want you to look in the camera and tell your future baby mother, what are your expectations?
Some of my expectations, definitely, cheating is a no-no, because that's what leads to, paternity fraud. And somebody was cheating. As I said before, it becomes a conversation. So everything surrounding having a child, having a family, we must talk about it. We must discuss in a mature way. There are so many things that we definitely have to talk about. The finances, so much. But most of all, I think, and I always say, what is greater than love for me is understanding. So she must be able to understand where I'm coming from. And I'll be understanding of maybe her experience, even though I don't know what that might be like, but we must be able to meet each other in the middle. I know that this is what we're working with and this is how we're going to work it out.
Paternity fraud is prevalent in Jamaica. What do you have to say to other men who are going through the same issues?
So to other men that are going through the same thing right now, I would definitely advise you, seek counseling, don't be ashamed. Yes, depression will come, but seek counseling, because it takes away from your productivity as a man, and you're not able to be the best version of yourself if you're not productive. So that's the first step when you discover that, paternity fraud rather has been committed.
This is Mindset. We'll be right back with our resident psychiatrist, Dr. Roger Roberts.
Mindset is brought to you by Yadman Gas, Jack Den Medical Services, GPS to Beauty Medispa, Ministry of Health and Wellness, McKay Security, Gibbo Trading, AC Marriott Hotel, TWP Attorneys, Virtue Artistry, and 876 DNA Testing.
Welcome back. Each week on Mindset, we're joined by our resident psychiatrist, Dr. Roger Roberts. Quite often we suffer in silence, which complicates matters in our mind. Dr. Roberts, what's your take on this?
I just want to start off by saying, Vaughn, I'm sorry about your experience, and I'm really happy that you were able to join us on Mindset to share with us. Oftentimes men shy away from spaces that involve them sharing about their emotional pain. On the issue of paternity fraud, I just want to say that Vaughn's story underscores some very important points. There is the child, there is the parents, and there is the family of the parents. The paternity fraud will impact on pretty much everyone. Now, from the point of view of the child, the situation with Vaughn is probably one of the easier ones because he discovered at an early stage before the child has that cognitive development and awareness So that one wasn't a bad situation for the child. However, generally, when we talk about paternity fraud, the child, once they discover and they're at a stage where they are aware, they can go through identity crisis. Who am I now? I believe that this man was my father. He's not. People may say, oh, I have my father's smile. Whose smile do I have now? And they go through that kind of identity crisis. And coming with that, there may be behavioral problems, there may be anxiety, there may be grief. I've seen over the years where academic performance is affected as well. So there's just that deterioration in how they're performing at school. For the man, it's really unfortunate that in the Jamaican setting, there is this minimization of the impact of paternity fraud. I may get in some problem to saying this, but the reality is that I don't think that if women were the victim, that this minimization would have existed. I think that we minimize psychological pain and distress that men experience in our culture, and it's something that we need to look at and change. So when it comes to the man, first of all, he's going through grief because he has lost a child. He may develop anxiety, depression. And then at the same time, and Vaughn mentioned this, there is the issue of infidelity now. And sometimes this is only discovered with the paternity fraud. And then coming out of that to process that kind of betrayal, it affects not just the current relationship, but it may affect the future relationship of the man. Because now, how do I trust a woman again after this kind of a betrayal? When we think about the fact that there are other family members that are a part of the process, aunts, uncles, grandma, they're going through that kind of a grieving process as well because they're losing a child. In Jamaica, we have this kind of a dark humor where we ridicule men when they're a victim of paternity fraud. And I'm hoping that we look at it through a different lens, through this kind of experience that Vaughn would have shared, people to recognize how far-reaching the psychological impact is. I think that before I go, I will just say that there are people who are probably going through this, and based on the statistics and the data, people will be going through this in the future. And I would say that to minimize the impact, there are a few things that we should take into consideration. One is the time of disclosure. When we think about it, what time is appropriate to tell a child that your father is not your father? It can be a very tricky thing, especially when this is the case for an adolescent, when they're going through their own identity crisis. It must be timed appropriately. It's clearly easier for a child who's young, like age 1, 2, 3, because they haven't got that awareness. The timing is important to safeguard the child from further deterioration mentally. The second point is that we should recognize that there are multiple people involved and support is required for everybody involved. So it's not just the father or the family members. I've seen cases, and I know that a lot of the men in Jamaica who have been victim of paternity fraud, they're probably singing the artist Envision, them gala wicked, them probably thinking that. But I've seen situations where the women presented to me because they genuinely didn't know. They may have been misguided. They may have been unwise in their action by having multiple sexual partners, but they genuinely did not know that they have committed paternity fraud. And I've seen them suffer from the psychological impact of that. So I don't want it to be a situation where we think that the women are not affected at times. Sometimes they're affected. Sometimes they're aware. And of course, in those cases, very unfortunate. But support is needed for everyone. I think that those are some important pointers as it regards to paternity fraud.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Now, what we heard today was not just a story about paternity fraud. It was a story about trust, identity, heartbreak, and strength. Vaughn, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your willingness to help others by sharing your journey. These conversations are not easy, but they are necessary. I'm Suzette Buchanan, and this is Mindset. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Each week on Mindset, we share the voices of the forgotten residents of Bellevue Hospital. Ready to return to society? but left behind by their families. Hear their stories only on Mindset.
Well, my family, before I come here, they died in 2017. When I'm trying to look at my real mother, her name is either Shirley or Sheila Hamilton. We live somewhere in Castle Spring area. I'm trying to find her, I can't find her. They used to nice and loving to me. Before they died, they wanted to come look for me.
So how long have you been here?
17 years. Life has been so good at Bellevue. If I was from Bellevue, I wouldn't be alive right now. I feel enjoyable knowing that somebody's coming to visit me. And then they died. And the visit stopped. Feel sad and worried about the whole situation.
You have any more family members?
Adopted cousins.
Have they ever come to look for you?
No, they don't come look for me yet. They must come look for me, man. Peter French here in Bellevue Hospital. I started with nobody that visiting us.
Set decor was provided by Elite Home Decor and shot on location at the AC Marriott Hotel.